Imagine celebrating your own mother's birthday, glass raised, heart full of hope. Then, she looks you dead in the eye and tells you the best gift you could give her is to leave her life. That's exactly what my mother, Evelyn, said to me on her 65th birthday. My name is Cassandra Reynolds, and for 35 years, I thought I was a good daughter. I spent my entire life trying to earn her love, to be enough. That night, after her brutal words, I made a silent promise. I would give her precisely what she asked for. I packed my life into boxes, sold my house, froze every single account, and then I disappeared. She had no idea how completely I would take her at her word. To truly grasp the seismic shift that night represented, you need to understand the foundations it shattered. My childhood wasn't filled with warm hugs and bedtime stories. It was a constant performance for an unpleasable audience. My mother's disapproval was the soundtrack to my early years. Nothing I did was ever good enough. My artwork, messy. My grades, never perfect enough. My clothes, never stylish enough. While other mothers proudly displayed crayon drawings, mine would pick apart every flaw before tossing them into the trash. Stand up straight, Cassandra. No one likes a girl with bad posture, she'd snap in public, yanking my shoulders back so hard it left red marks. Smile more, but not like that. You look ridiculous. These cutting remarks were the air I breathed, the constant hum of my existence. My father, though, he was different. He was my lighthouse in that storm. Warm, encouraging, always quick to praise my smallest efforts. "That's my bright girl," he'd say, his eyes crinkling with pride when I showed him a science fair project or a story I'd written. He was the vital buffer, the only thing standing between my mother's chilling criticism and my fragile self-esteem. Then, everything changed. I was just 12 when Dad died, suddenly, tragically, of a heart attack. I found him collapsed in our backyard while Mom was out at her weekly bridge club. The memory is still vivid, a slow-motion horror film, screaming for help, a neighbor rushing over to perform CPR, the ambulance lights flashing against our house. But what truly seared itself into my soul were my mother's first words to me at the hospital. Her eyes, cold and accusing, pinned me. "Why weren't you watching him more carefully? You knew his heart was weak." Those words, they planted themselves deep, festering. In her twisted narrative, I became partially responsible for his death. It was the genesis of a guilt she would cultivate in me for decades, a poisonous seed that blossomed into an unbearable burden. My teenage years were an endless, desperate quest for approval that, of course, never came. I joined every club, maintained a 4.0 GPA, became captain of the debate team, editor of the school newspaper. Each achievement was met with a dismissive wave and a comparison. Jennifer's daughter got into Harvard, or Lisa's daughter has much better stage presence in her recital. Despite her unwavering discouragement, I earned a full scholarship to Northwestern University. "You'll probably drop out after a semester," she predicted, her voice dripping with skepticism when I showed her the acceptance letter. "College is harder than you think." But I didn't drop out. I graduated summa cum laude, with a double major in finance and economics. Mom? She didn't attend, claiming she had a migraine. My relationships suffered most from her insidious interference. At 22, I dated Michael, a kind medical student my friends adored. When he came to dinner, Mom spent the entire evening subtly undermining me. "Cassandra was always so awkward with boys," she told him over dessert, a condescending smile playing on her lips. "I'm surprised she caught your attention." A week later, she called him privately, spinning tales of my emotional issues and how I needed more therapy before I could be ready for a serious relationship. He broke things off shortly after. This toxic pattern repeated with Ryan at 25 and James at 28. Each time, my mother found new, creative ways to sabotage whatever happiness I had found. "I'm just looking out for you," she'd insist, her tone cloyingly sweet. "You have terrible judgment in men." Despite it all, I clawed my way to a successful career as a financial advisor. By 35, I was handling portfolios for high-net-worth clients, a senior advisor at my firm. I bought a beautiful condo in Boston's Back Bay, building a stable life for myself. And still, I supported her. After Dad died, she never worked, living off his life insurance and then his pension. When those funds dwindled, I became her personal ATM. I paid her property taxes, covered her utilities, funded her shockingly extravagant lifestyle. Every Sunday, I'd drive to her house in Brooklyn, bracing myself for the ritual complaint session about her neighbors, her friends, and most often, me. This year, for her 65th birthday, I planned something truly special. I reserved a private room at Fleming's Steakhouse, her absolute favorite. I invited her closest friends, arranged for a professional photographer, and even ordered a custom cake from a bakery she'd mentioned once in passing. But the real gift, the one that held all my desperate hope, was my grandmother's sapphire bracelet. A cherished family heirloom. My grandmother had left it to me, though my mother had always coveted it. I'd spent months working with a jeweler to restore it, to replace the clasp with white gold. I believed this generous gesture, this profound sacrifice, would finally earn her approval. This birthday will be different, I told my therapist the week before, my voice thick with a longing I couldn't quite extinguish. I think she'll finally see how much I care. My therapist, bless her heart, gave me a concerned look but said nothing. Deep down, a cold knot of dread told me I was setting myself up for another devastating disappointment. But hope, foolish, stubborn hope, is a powerful and often cruel thing. The evening of my mother's birthday arrived, bathed in a false glow of perfection. Fleming's private dining room gleamed under candlelight, reflecting off crystal and fine china. Her favorite white roses and hydrangeas adorned the tables, their delicate scent filling the air. The chef had prepared her preferred appetizers. The bartender stocked extra bottles of her Cabernet. I arrived an hour early, a frantic whirlwind of anticipation and anxiety, straightening place cards, adjusting lighting. The restaurant manager, oblivious to the emotional tightrope I was walking, smiled warmly. "Your mother must be very special," he said. "She is," I replied automatically, a lie that tasted bitter on my tongue, my stomach tightening with unspoken complications. At 7 sharp, the guests began to trickle in. Her friends greeted me warmly, many commenting on the beautiful evening. "Your mother is so lucky to have you," said Eleanor, her oldest friend, her words echoing with a hollow sound in my ears. I smiled politely, wondering if my mother shared that sentiment. My mother arrived at 7:15. She wore the expensive black dress I'd bought her last Christmas, her silver hair impeccably styled. I moved to embrace her, but she offered her cheek for a kiss instead, a familiar, chilly ritual. "The valet took forever," were her first words, a sharp edge to her voice. "And this room is too dark. How will anyone see properly?" I immediately offered to adjust the lighting. She sighed, an exasperated, dismissive sound. "Never mind. It's fine. Who selected these flowers? Hydrangeas make me sneeze." Hydrangeas. Her favorites. I'd watched her plant them in our garden every spring throughout my entire childhood. I said nothing, just signaled a waiter for her wine. The dinner proceeded with my mother holding court, barely acknowledging my existence except to instruct me to tell the waiter her steak was overcooked, though I could see it was perfectly medium rare, just as she'd ordered. After the main course, before dessert was served, I stood. The small, blue velvet box felt impossibly heavy in my trembling hands as I approached her chair. "Mom," I began, my voice, miraculously, stronger than I felt. "I wanted to give you something special for your 65th birthday." I handed her the box. This was grandmother's bracelet. I had it restored, and the clasp replaced with white gold. The table fell silent, every eye on my mother. She opened the box. The sapphires caught the candlelight, twinkling, a cascade of deep blue against the gleaming white gold. It was truly exquisite, a masterpiece of restoration that had cost me thousands, entrusted to one of Boston's top jewelers. My mother looked at it for a long, agonizing moment. Then, with a chilling finality, she closed the box with a sharp snap. "Your grandmother should have left this to me in the first place," she said, her tone flat, utterly devoid of warmth. She always did favor you inappropriately. The table grew uncomfortably quiet, a suffocating silence. Eleanor, sitting beside my mother, touched her arm gently. Evelyn, it's a beautiful gift. My mother merely placed the box on the table without another word. My cheeks burned with humiliation, a familiar, searing heat, as I retreated to my seat. When the cake arrived, glowing with candles, everyone sang happy birthday. My mother smiled for the photographer, a brittle, practiced smile, then stood to make her toast. "Thank you all for coming tonight," she said, her voice clear and carrying across the now silent room. "It's nice to be surrounded by true friends on my birthday." She pointedly did not look at me. As I get older, I find myself valuing authenticity more and more. She raised her glass higher, and then, slowly, deliberately, she turned her gaze to me. What happened next plays in slow motion in my memory, an unholy ballet of cruelty. "If I were to wish for a gift this year," she continued, her eyes utterly devoid of warmth, "the best gift would be for certain people to just leave my life entirely. No more pretense, no more obligation, just freedom for relationships that were never meant to be." The room went completely still, an intake of collective breath. Her friends shifted uncomfortably, some staring at their plates, others exchanging quick, horrified glances. There was no mistaking her meaning. "To another year," she finished, taking a long sip of her wine, as if she hadn't just publicly disemboweled her only child. I sat frozen, unable to move, unable to speak. The cake, a symbol of hope and celebration, sat untouched before us. The photographer, sensing the unbearable tension, quietly packed his equipment and slipped away. For the remainder of the evening, my mother chatted gaily with her friends as if nothing had happened. I moved through the motions of hosting, my body on autopilot, while her words replayed in my mind, a cruel, endless loop. The drive home was silent, thick with unspoken pain. When we arrived, she gathered her things, including that untouched bracelet box, and opened the car door. "Dinner was adequate," she said, her voice dismissive. "Next time, choose a better restaurant. Fleming's has gone downhill." I couldn't help myself, the words tumbling out. "Did you mean what you said? About wanting me out of your life?" She paused, one foot on the curb. "Cassandra, don't be so sensitive. I was making a general statement." "It didn't feel general, Mom. It felt very specific." She sighed, a heavy, theatrical sound. "If you choose to take everything personally, that's your problem. But yes, our relationship has always been a burden. I did my duty raising you. I'm not obligated to pretend we have some special bond now." "I pay your bills," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "I maintain your house. I take you to every doctor's appointment. And you never let me forget it, do you?" she snapped. "You think your financial support buys you the right to be in my life? That's your father in you, always keeping score." She slammed the car door, the sound echoing in the night, and walked to her house without a backward glance. I sat in that driveway for nearly 20 minutes, tears streaming down my face, hot and furious, before I could compose myself enough to drive home. By the way, if you're still with me on this unbelievable journey, make sure to hit that subscribe button. There are so many more stories of courage and transformation coming your way. That night, lying in bed, the realization hit me with the force of a physical blow. Nothing would ever change. No achievement, no gift, no sacrifice would ever be enough to make my mother love me. For 35 years, I had been running on a hamster wheel, exhausting myself for an impossible goal. As dawn broke, a steel-cold resolve settled within me. I didn't just make a decision. I forged a new path that would change both our lives forever. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I sat at my kitchen table, a legal pad before me, making lists and drawing up plans. By 6 a.m., as the sun's first tentative rays touched the Boston skyline, I had a complete, meticulously detailed strategy for disappearing from my mother's life. Not just emotionally, but practically and financially, too. First, a call to my office, leaving a message for my boss. 2 weeks of emergency personal leave. I had months of unused vacation time, accumulated over years spent prioritizing my mother's needs over my own. Next, I called James Wilson, a realtor I'd helped with investment properties. I need to sell my condo, quickly and discreetly, I told him. No public listings, no open houses. Find a private buyer willing to pay cash, even if it means taking slightly below market value. He sounded concerned. Are you in some kind of trouble, Cassandra? No trouble, I assured him, my voice firm. Just making necessary changes. By noon, I had an appointment with my financial advisor, Gregory Peters. I arrived at his office with a stack of documents, a detailed list of every account and asset. I need to untangle my finances from my mother's, I explained, my resolve unwavering. Every account, every automatic payment, every single financial connection. Gregory, ever the professional, reviewed my documents. This is extensive, he noted. You're currently paying for her property taxes, utilities, credit card minimums, car insurance, and medical copays. Yes, I confirmed, and I want it all stopped. Immediately. May I ask why? He probed gently. This is quite sudden. It's time for both of us to live independently, I stated simply. We spent 3 grueling hours restructuring my entire financial life. I froze the joint checking account where I deposited her monthly allowance. I canceled every automatic payment from my accounts to her creditors. I removed myself as an authorized user on her credit cards and, with a pang I hadn't anticipated, removed her as the beneficiary on my life insurance policy and retirement accounts. What about the mortgage on her house? Gregory asked. You've been making those payments for 5 years. Stop those too, I said, my voice rock solid. The house is in her name. The responsibility is hers. From there, I went to the post office, forwarding all my mail to a new P.O. box. I called every service provider we shared, from the home security company to the lawn care service, removing my name and payment information. Using my expertise as a financial advisor, I was meticulous. I left no loose ends, no forgotten automatic payments, no financial tether that could ever pull me back into orbit around her. Back at my condo, I packed only what I truly needed: clothes, important documents, irreplaceable photos of my father, and a few sentimental items. Everything else, I decided, could be sold with the condo or donated. As I packed, a profound realization washed over me: how little I truly cared about my possessions. So many of them had been purchased to impress my mother, to meet her unspoken expectations of what my life should look like. The expensive artwork I never particularly liked, the formal dining set I never used, the designer clothes that never felt comfortable, all could stay behind. They were vestiges of a life I was shedding. That evening, I wrote my mother a letter. It took 7 drafts, each one a battle between raw emotion and the calm resolve I needed to maintain. Finally, I had something that expressed my feelings without anger or accusation. Mom, it began. You said the best gift would be for me to leave your life. I'm giving you that gift. By the time you read this, I will be gone. The financial support I have provided over the years has ended. The house bills and all expenses are now solely your responsibility. This is not done out of anger, but acceptance. You are right that our relationship has been based on obligation rather than love. I release us both from that obligation. Do not try to find me. I do not wish to be found. Cassandra. I sealed the letter in an envelope and drove to her house late that night. The city silent and empty around me. I slipped it under her door, and then I walked away, without looking back. That night, I checked into a hotel under a different name, paying cash, a ghost dissolving into the night. As I sat on the generic hotel bed, a surreal mix of emotions washed over me, searing grief for the life I'd always longed for, but also a profound, breathtaking relief. For the first time in my entire existence, I was not responsible for my mother's happiness, her comfort, or her financial security. The sheer weight that lifted from my shoulders was so immense, so unexpected, that I actually gasped aloud in the empty room. It felt like I was finally breathing free. Over the next week, My plan unfolded with a chilling, mechanical precision. James found a cash buyer for my condo, accepting 15% below market value for the quick, private sale. I opened new bank accounts at a different institution, transferring all my assets. I deactivated my social media accounts, cutting off every digital connection, and got a new phone number. I took only what fit in my car, driving west with no specific destination in mind, just a desperate need for distance. Each mile put more than just physical distance between my old life and whatever would come next. I stopped checking my old email. I didn't answer calls from unknown numbers. I meticulously severed every tether to my former existence, like a ship cutting its anchors in a storm. The first week of freedom was disorienting, a strange, hollow echo. Habit had me reaching for my phone to check on my mother, to make sure she'd taken her medication, or to remind her of an upcoming appointment. I'd catch myself planning Sunday visits that would never happen. At times, a crushing wave of guilt would crash over me, leaving me breathless with doubt, wondering if I had done the right thing. But beneath that guilt and grief, a nascent current of something unfamiliar began to stir. Possibility. For the first time, my decisions affected only me. My time was entirely my own. My resources, substantial after years of professional success, were mine to direct as I chose. I had disappeared from my mother's life completely. What I didn't expect was how thoroughly I would disappear from my own former life as well. The Cassandra who had existed in Boston, the dutiful daughter constantly seeking approval, was gone too. Who would take her place remained a terrifying, exhilarating mystery. 1 week after I vanished, my mother began trying to contact me. At first, her messages to my old email and voicemails to my disconnected number were more irritated than genuinely concerned. Cassandra, the lawn service says you canceled their contract. Call me immediately. The electric company claims the automatic payment was stopped. Fix this today. My prescriptions need refilling. Where are you? She never mentioned my letter. In her mind, I was still responsible for her life, regardless of what had happened or what I had so clearly communicated. 10 days after I left, my former assistant, Megan, emailed my new address, which I'd only provided to her and my therapist. Your mother came to the office today, she wrote. She was very upset, demanding to know where you were. Security had to escort her out when she started yelling. Is everything okay? I thanked Megan for letting me know, but offered no details. The same day, Eleanor called my therapist's office, trying to glean information about me. Bound by confidentiality, Dr. Winters revealed nothing, but she did relay the message during our next phone session. Your mother appears to be escalating, Dr. Winters said carefully. Eleanor said she's been calling everyone you know, becoming increasingly frantic. 2 weeks in, my mother discovered her house payment was overdue. This revelation, according to Eleanor's message to my therapist, sent her into a tailspin. She hadn't made a mortgage payment in 5 years and had apparently forgotten the process entirely. Social media became her next battleground, though I deactivated my accounts. Friends forwarded screenshots of her posts, which grew more dramatic by the day. My daughter has abandoned me without warning, she wailed. After all I sacrificed for her, she has left her elderly mother without support or care. Please help me find her. The comments filled with sympathetic responses from people who knew only her version of events. A few who knew us both expressed skepticism, but were quickly shouted down by her fervent supporters. 3 weeks after my disappearance, my mother received notice that her joint account with me had been frozen. According to Eleanor, who continued to be my therapist's conduit to the unraveling drama, this was when reality truly began to set in. She went to the bank and made quite a scene, Eleanor reported. They explained the account was frozen and suggested she open a new one with her own funds. She said she had no funds, that Cassandra handled all that. My mother had never bothered to understand her own financial situation. Despite having a modest pension from my father's job and Social Security income, she had always relied on my supplemental support to maintain her lifestyle. Without it, she faced a harsh, undeniable reality. A month into my absence, my mother received notice that her credit card payments were past due. All 6 of her cards had been maxed out, and she had been making only minimum payments using my money. Now, she faced over $40,000 in staggering credit card debt with no way to pay it. When James Wilson placed a sold sign in front of my condo, my mother drove there in a panic, only to find new owners moving in. They, of course, had no information about me to share. 5 weeks after I left, my mother missed her second mortgage payment and received her first formal warning from a bank. This, coupled with her mounting credit card debt, caused her first health crisis. Eleanor found her collapsed in her kitchen, hyperventilating from an anxiety attack. At the hospital, her blood pressure was dangerously high, and the doctor prescribed medication for anxiety and hypertension. She kept asking for you, Eleanor told my therapist. It was the first time I saw her actually worried about you rather than what you could do for her. After 6 weeks, my mother left her first voicemail that wasn't demanding or accusing. Her voice sounded smaller, older, fragile. Cassandra, I don't understand why you've done this. I need you to come home. I miss you. The last part sounded forced, unpracticed, as if expressing genuine affection was a foreign language to her. 2 months after I left, my mother received foreclosure warnings. Her house, worth nearly $1 million in Brooklyn's expensive market, had substantial equity, but she had no idea how to access it or manage a sale. Eleanor, despite being 80 herself, helped my mother meet with a financial advisor who explained her situation in stark, undeniable terms. Sell the house, pay off the debt, and find a more affordable living situation, or face bankruptcy and foreclosure. Your mother finally broke down, Eleanor reported to Dr. Winters. She admitted that she drove you away. She even showed me the letter you left. It was the first time I've seen her take responsibility for anything in the 40 years I've known her. This was a monumental shift. 3 months after my disappearance, my mother wrote me a letter. Eleanor forwarded it to my therapist, who asked if I wanted to read it. I hesitated, my heart thrumming with a mixture of fear and faint hope, but eventually I agreed. The letter was unlike anything I had ever received from her. Her usual perfect penmanship was shaky, almost desperate. The paper was wrinkled, as if it had been crumpled and smoothed out countless times. Cassandra, it read, I have spent these months angry at you for abandoning me. Yesterday, I found a photo album in the attic. Pictures of you growing up that I had forgotten about. Looking at your face in those photos, I saw something I never allowed myself to see before. How much you were hurting, even as a child, because of me. I was not a good mother to you. I was jealous of your relationship with your father. After he died, I blamed you because blaming myself was too painful. I resented you for being young and having opportunities one never had. None of this is an excuse. I am not asking for money or help. The house is being sold next month. I am moving to a senior apartment that I can afford on my pension and Social Security. I understand why you left. I would have left too. I am sorry, Mon. The letter contained no demands, no guilt trips, no manipulation. For the first time in my life, my mother had seen me as a separate person, with valid feelings and a story of my own. A week later, Eleanor sent another update. My mother had joined a support group for parents estranged from their adult children. She was seeing a therapist weekly. She was learning to do things for herself that she had always relied on others to handle. On her next birthday, exactly 1 year after the dinner that changed everything, Eleanor sent a final message. Evelyn celebrated quietly at home. She had a small cake that she bought herself. She told me it was the first birthday where she truly understood what she had lost. Not the financial support or the practical help, but you, just you. While my mother was finally confronting her new reality, I was diligently building mine. After 2 weeks of driving across the country, a pilgrimage of self-discovery, I settled in Seattle, as far from Boston as I could get while staying in the continental United States. The constant rain and gray skies perfectly matched my mood those first few months, a comforting melancholy. But gradually, the stunning, wild beauty of the Pacific Northwest began to mend something deep within me. I found a modest apartment in Queen and with a breathtaking view of Puget Sound. Unlike my sterile Boston condo, I furnished this place entirely to my own taste, simple, comfortable furniture in blues and greens that reminded me of the ocean. No formal dining room, no guest room designed to impress visitors who never came. Just spaces that felt, for the first time, truly like home to me. Using my experience and credentials, I found a position at a boutique financial firm specializing in ethical investments. The company was smaller than my Boston firm, the clients less wealthy, but the culture emphasized work-life balance and genuine service rather than prestige and profit. We value advisors who care about their clients as people, not just portfolios, the managing partner told me during my interview. I almost cried. My next priority was therapy. Dr. Matthews specialized in childhood trauma and toxic family dynamics. Unlike my Boston therapist, who had gently encouraged reconciliation over the years, Dr. Matthews validated my decision to separate from my mother. Estrangement is sometimes the healthiest choice, she told me during our first session. Not every relationship can or should be saved. Those words were a lifeline, giving me explicit permission to stop feeling guilty about my choice, to stop second-guessing the decision that had allowed me to breathe freely for the first time in decades. Making friends proved more challenging than finding work or housing. In Boston, most of my social connections had been through my mother or my workplace. In Seattle, I had to learn to forge relationships based solely on common interests and genuine connection. I joined a hiking group, a book club, and a community garden. Slowly, tentatively, I built a circle of friends who knew nothing about my past, who liked me for who I was rather than what I could be to them. These connections felt like solid ground beneath my feet. The first holiday season alone was difficult. Thanksgiving came with a wave of grief so intense I spent the day in bed, looking at old photos of my father and crying for the family I never really had. Christmas brought anxiety dreams where I was frantically shopping for my mother, only to realize I had forgotten what she even liked. But New Year's Eve marked a turning point. My new friend, Stephanie, invited me to a small gathering at her house. There, amidst laughter and quiet conversation, I met Daniel, a high school English teacher with kind eyes and a quiet sense of humor. We talked for hours about books, hiking trails, and our favorite spots in Seattle. When he asked for my number, I hesitated, old fears surfacing, the instinct to guard myself, but I gave it to him anyway. It was a small act of courage that felt enormous. Our first few dates were nothing like my fraught Boston relationships. There was no pressure to impress, no agonizing calculation about what my mother would think of him. We simply enjoyed each other's presence, two adults choosing to spend time together, finding joy in shared moments. Meeting Daniel's family was an education in what healthy family dynamics looked like. His parents disagreed without contempt, expressed affection without strings, and showed genuine interest in his life without trying to control it. The first time his mother hugged me goodbye, I stood stiff with surprise before awkwardly returning the embrace. "Your family is so normal," I told Daniel afterward, a hint of wonder in my voice. "It's kind of amazing." He just laughed. "They have their quirks, but yes, they're pretty great." 6 months into my new life, I had my first major breakthrough in therapy. Dr. Matthews had asked me to write a letter to my youngest self, the child who had tried so desperately to earn her mother's love. "Dear little Cassandra," I wrote, my hand shaking slightly. "It was never your job to make Mom happy. Her unhappiness lived inside her long before you were born. You didn't cause it, and you could never fix it. You were a good daughter. You were worthy of love exactly as you were." Reading those words aloud in Dr. Matthews' office, I sobbed until my throat hurt, releasing decades of pent-up pain. For the first time, I truly believed them. That same week, I received a letter from my mother, forwarded through my therapist. Reading her words, I felt a complicated mix of emotions, validation that my experience had been real, a profound sorrow for the relationship we never had, and a strange, tentative hope that perhaps she was capable of change. I didn't respond immediately. Instead, I brought the letter to Dr. Matthews and spent several sessions processing what it meant and how, if at all, I wanted to respond. "There's no rush," Dr. Matthews assured me. "Take all the time you need to decide what is best for you." The 7-month mark of my new life brought another milestone. I was promoted at work after bringing in several significant new clients. My approach to financial advising, which focused on understanding clients' values and goals rather than just maximizing returns, had proven incredibly successful. "You have a gift for making people feel heard," my boss told me. It was perhaps the first professional compliment I had received that had nothing to do with numbers or performance metrics. It spoke directly to my humanity. Dating Daniel continued to teach me about healthy relationships. When we disagreed, there was no silent treatment, no threats of abandonment, no keeping score of who was wrong. We simply talked it through, sometimes awkwardly, until we found understanding. When he told me he loved me for the first time, I panicked, a primal fear seizing me, and pulled away for nearly a week. He gave me space, but made it clear he was still there. When I finally explained my fears, he listened without judgment, holding my hand gently. "Love shouldn't be scary," he said simply, his eyes warm. "It should feel like coming home." As the 1-year mark of my departure from Boston approached, I received another update from Eleanor through my therapist. My mother had sold her house, paid off her debts, and moved into a senior living apartment. She was taking art classes and had joined a book club. The photo Eleanor attached showed my mother looking older, but somehow softer, more serene, smiling tentatively at the camera while holding a watercolor she had painted. Looking at that photo, a profound sense of wonder mixed with a tremor of trepidation, I made a decision I never thought I would make. I would return to Boston, not to stay, not to rescue, but to see for myself who my mother had become in my absence. After a year of diligently building my new life in Seattle, I flew back to Boston with a potent mixture of dread and curiosity. Daniel offered to come with me, but this was a journey I knew I needed to take alone. I didn't tell my mother I was coming. I wasn't ready for a planned reunion, with its heavy weight of expectations and potential disappointments. Instead, I booked a hotel downtown and spent the first day reacquainting myself with the city that had been my home for most of my life. Boston felt simultaneously familiar and utterly foreign, like a vivid dream remembered upon waking. I walked through the public garden, past my old office building, and by my former condo. These places that had once defined my daily existence now seemed to belong to someone else's life, a ghost of my past. On my second day, I visited Eleanor, the only person besides my therapist who knew I was in town. At 81, she remained sharp and incredibly insightful. "Your mother has changed," she told me over tea in her elegant Beacon Hill apartment. "Not completely, mind you. She still has her moments, but there's a humility to her now that I never thought I'd see." "Do you think I should see her?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Eleanor considered carefully before answering. "Only you can decide that, dear. But I will say this. The woman who told you to leave her life is not entirely the same woman who lives in that senior apartment now." I hadn't planned to see my mother that day, but as I left Eleanor's building, I found myself driving toward Brooklyn, a magnetic pull guiding me automatically. My mother's new address was a modest apartment complex for seniors, nothing like the stately colonial home she had lived in for decades. I parked across the street, intending just to see the building and leave, a furtive observer. But as I sat in my rental car, I saw her walking toward the entrance, carrying a small grocery bag. She moved more slowly than I remembered, her posture less rigidly controlled, more relaxed. Without conscious decision, I got out of the car. We nearly collided at the coffee shop next door to her building. I had decided to get a coffee to calm my fraying nerves before leaving. And there she was, in line ahead of me. She didn't recognize me at first. My appearance had changed. Hair shorter, style more casual, my expression more relaxed, less guarded. It was only when the barista called out Cassandra for my order that she turned, her eyes widening in pure shock. "Cassandra." Her voice was a bare whisper. "Hello, Mom." We stood frozen, suspended in time, the cheerful bustle of the coffee shop continuing around us as if oblivious to the gravity of the moment. Finally, she spoke again, her voice still thin with disbelief. Are you okay?" The question surprised me, landing with a soft thud. In all our years together, she had rarely asked about my well-being with genuine concern. I said simply, allowing the truth to settle. Are you? She nodded, her eyes never leaving my face, searching, assessing. Would you sit with me? Just for a few minutes. I hesitated, then gestured to a small table by the window. We sat awkwardly, like two strangers who had once, impossibly, been mother and daughter. I didn't tell anyone except Eleanor, I said. She nodded again, understanding. You look well. Different, but well. So do you, I replied, and for the first time, I truly meant it. There was a softness to her now, a subtle gentleness that hadn't existed before. The harsh lines of perpetual disapproval had somewhat faded. After a few minutes of strange, hesitant small talk about the weather in the coffee shop, I suggested we walk to the park across the street, a public place, neutral ground, but more private than the bustling cafe. We sat on a bench, leaving a careful, almost symbolic space between us. For several minutes, neither of us spoke. Then, my mother did something I had never, ever seen her do. She cried. Not the manipulative tears she had sometimes used to get her way, but silent, dignified tears that she tried to wipe away discreetly, almost ashamed. I'm sorry, she said, her voice steady despite the tears that tracked paths down her cheeks. I never thought I would see you again. I never planned to come back, I admitted, the brutal honesty hanging in the air between us. She nodded. I understand why. I've had a lot of time to think about everything. Eleanor mentioned you joined a support group. Yes, parents estranged from adult children. PAC they call it. She gave a small, self-deprecating laugh, a sound I'd never heard from her before. At first, I went to learn how to get you back. But what I learned instead was why you left. She turned slightly to face me, her hands clasped tightly in her lap, her gaze direct. The other parents there, they all had stories about their ungrateful children who abandoned them for no reason. But as they talked, I began to see the patterns, the control, the criticism, the emotional manipulation. I recognized myself in their stories, and it was profoundly uncomfortable. I remained silent, hardly believing what I was hearing, a fragile hope blossoming in my chest. My therapist, Dr. Collins, helped me understand something I never wanted to face. She took a deep, shuddering breath. I treated you the way my mother treated me. This was new information, a stunning revelation. My grandmother, who had died when I was 10, had always seemed like a saint in family stories. Your grandmother? I questioned, my voice laced with disbelief. My mother nodded. She was cruel. Nothing I did was ever good enough. She compared me constantly to my cousins, to neighbors' children. She told me I was the disappointment of her life. Her voice caught, thick with ancient pain. Sound familiar? A chill, despite the warm spring day, ran down my spine. You never told me. I never told anyone. I was ashamed, somehow, as if her treatment of me was my fault. She looked down at her hands, then back at me, her eyes pleading. When you were born, I swore I would be different, but I didn't know how. I had no model for good mothering, only perfect, unattainable images from magazines and television that I could never live up to. That explains some things, I said carefully, but it doesn't excuse them. No, she agreed immediately, her head bowing slightly. It does not. Nothing excuses how I treated you, especially after your father died. I was jealous of your relationship with him. He knew how to love you in a way I didn't know how to love anyone. The frankness of this admission stunned me, a deep wound finally exposed. My mother had never acknowledged my father's superior parenting, let alone admitted jealousy of our profound bond. After he died, I blamed you because I couldn't bear to blame myself for not being there when he needed me. And then, over the years, it became a habit, making you responsible for my happiness, my comfort, my everything. She wiped away another tear, her face etched with regret. It was wrong, Cassandra. All of it was wrong. We sat in silence for several minutes, the unbearable weight of decades of pain between us slowly beginning to dissipate. I brought something for you, she said finally, her voice still a little shaky, reaching into her purse. She pulled out a worn leather journal. I've been writing this since you left. My therapist suggested it might help me understand my behavior and its impact on you. She held it out to me, a peace offering. You don't have to read it, but if you ever want to understand, it's all there. My childhood, my marriage to your father, my failures as your mother, and my work to become someone different. I took the journal, feeling its unexpected weight in my hands. Thank you, I said, not knowing if I would ever open it. I'm not asking for forgiveness, she continued, her gaze unwavering. I'm not even asking to be part of your life again. I just wanted you to know that I understand now why you had to leave, and that I am truly sorry for making that necessary. As we parted that day, there was no tearful reconciliation, no dramatic embrace, no promises of a magically restored relationship. Instead, there was something far more valuable: truth. For the first time, we had spoken honestly about our shared, painful past and the damage that had been done. I live in Seattle now, I told her as we stood to leave. I have a good life there. She smiled, a genuine, soft smile without bitterness, a sight I'd rarely witnessed. I'm glad. That's what I should have wanted for you all along. I can't promise anything, I said carefully. But if you'd like, we could exchange emails. Just see how it goes. I would like that very much, she replied, her voice steady, but her eyes bright with unshed tears. We agreed to a limited correspondence, emails only for 3 months. No phone calls, no visits, just written words that could be considered carefully before being sent or read, a tentative bridge being built. As I watched her walk back to her apartment building, shoulders straighter than before, but without the rigid, tight control I remembered, I felt something unexpected: hope. Not for the fantasy mother-daughter relationship I had always craved as a child, but for a new, more honest connection between two flawed adults who shared a painful history, but might, just possibly, find a way forward. On the plane back to Seattle, I held the journal, feeling its presence, but I didn't open it. Some truths needed to be approached slowly, with immense care and support. I would share it with Dr. Matthews first, then decide if and when I was ready to read my mother's unfiltered thoughts. Daniel met me at the airport, his calm presence a soothing balm after the emotional turbulence of the trip. How did it go? He asked simply as we drove home, his hand finding mine. Honestly, I replied, a soft sigh escaping my lips. Nothing like I expected, and maybe, just maybe, better than I feared. 2 years have passed since I vanished from my mother's life. In that time, I have built something I never thought possible. A life defined by peace rather than constant anxiety, by genuine connection rather than obligation, by deep self-worth rather than desperate approval-seeking. My career in Seattle has flourished. I was made partner at the firm last year, specializing in helping women achieve financial independence after divorce or widowhood. The work feels meaningful in a way my Boston position never did, perhaps because I understand firsthand the transformative power of financial security in creating true freedom. Daniel proposed 6 months ago on a hiking trail overlooking the Olympic Mountains. Unlike my previous relationships, our connection has grown slowly and steadily, built on mutual respect and genuine affection rather than desperation or convenience. When I said yes, it was with complete confidence, a joyful certainty, rather than the nagging doubt that had accompanied major decisions in my past life. My relationship with my mother has also evolved into something I never imagined possible. Our email correspondence gradually expanded to include occasional phone calls. Last Christmas, I invited her to visit Seattle, and to my surprise, she came. Watching her interact with Daniel and his family was a revelation. She was quieter, more observant, less quick to judge or criticize. When Daniel's niece showed her a drawing, my mother admired it sincerely, without pointing out flaws or making comparisons. It was as if she was learning how to be a grandmother by watching Daniel's parents with their grandchildren. Your mother is not what I expected from your stories, Daniel said after she returned to Boston, a gentle observation. She is not the same person, I replied, realizing the profound truth of it as I spoke. Neither am I. We are planning a small wedding for next spring. When I hesitantly asked if she would like to attend, my mother's response surprised me again. I would be honored, she wrote, but I will understand if you change your mind. This day should be perfect for you, not stressful because of my presence. This consideration of my feelings, this willingness to step back if needed, was profound evidence of how far she had come. 2 years ago, she would have either demanded a central role or refused to attend out of spite. My mother continues her therapy and support group. She volunteers at a community garden and teaches art classes at her senior living facility. We will never have the close, effortless mother-daughter bond that some of my friends enjoy with their mothers. Too much damage was done too early, and some wounds, while healed, leave permanent scars. But we have something different, something hard-won. Through separation, self-reflection, and deliberate change, we have an honest relationship between two adults who see each other clearly, with all our flaws and strengths. The journal she gave me still sits on my bookshelf. I finally read it with Dr. Matthews' support 6 months after my Boston visit. Its pages contain pain I had never imagined, insights I had never expected, and a perspective on our shared history that helped me understand, if not excuse, the dynamics that shaped our relationship. Looking back on my decision to disappear from my mother's life, I see now that it was not just necessary for my healing, but for Hayes as well. As long as I remained the dutiful daughter, absorbing her criticism and desperately trying to meet her needs, neither of us could truly change. It was only in my absence that she was forced to confront her behavior and its painful consequences. Not everyone who hears my story will understand my choice. Some will think me cruel for leaving an elderly parent without support. Others might question why I ever allowed contact to resume. But I have learned that healing rarely follows a straight or simple path. Sometimes, the kindest thing we can do for ourselves and others is to disappear until we are seen for our true worth. Sometimes, the people who hurt us most deeply can change, given enough time and motivation. And sometimes, the family we create through choice can teach us how to heal the wounds inflicted by the family we were born into. Daniel and I are building a life based on mutual respect, open communication, and genuine affection. His family has welcomed me with a warmth I never knew was possible. My circle of friends continues to grow, each relationship teaching me something new about healthy connection. As for my mother and me, we proceed carefully, each interaction a small test of our new boundaries and understanding. There are still difficult moments, old patterns that try to reassert themselves. But now, we have tools to recognize and redirect these tendencies before they cause new damage. At her most recent birthday dinner, a quiet affair at a restaurant near her apartment, she raised her glass in a toast very different from the one that changed our lives 2 years ago. To second chances, she said simply, her voice clear and strong. And to the daughter who was brave enough to leave so that both of us could find better versions of ourselves. Sometimes, the greatest gift you can give yourself and others is the courage to vanish until they see your true worth. Have you ever had to create distance from someone you love in order to heal? Tell me what you think in the comments below. I truly want to know. And remember, it's never too late to create boundaries that protect your peace. Take care and good luck.